Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar, which is the last webinar of a series about TORFL levels. We just have one left, which is about participating in TORFL online. And today we're going to finish talking about all the levels of the Russian language, all the level of test of Russian as a foreign language. So what we're going to talk about today is C2, speaking and writing. As you remember last Wednesday, we talked about all the other parts, which are listening and grammar and reading. And this time we're going to talk about more challenging parts, at least what they are seen by many. And these parts are not multiple choice. They are performed either in front of the examiner, like speaking, or marked by an examiner later, like writing. And we will try to talk in details about them. So, what we're going to do today at the webinar, we're going to talk about C2 just one more time, about overall test format. We will look at speaking and writing in detail, and I will give you examples of the tasks. We will also practice them, so I will ask you for help and answering my questions. I will try to give you some practical ideas to use for self-study and give you a number of resources that you can use while preparing for C2. Taking C2 is definitely a challenge, and I think it's seen by way too many as an unattainable level. But I hope that after our last webinar, which was about vocabulary and grammar, reading and listening, you already understood that it's actually possible to take it and even to pass it. And I hope now, today, you're going to see that speaking and writing is also no big deal. Of course, it's more difficult than the previous levels. And if you imagine our levels as such as stairs, you can imagine it as A1, A2, this difference being the smallest. So between A1 and A2, it's usually maybe about a year and a half of practicing, of preparation. Then the break between A2 and B1 is bigger, and then it goes bigger and bigger after every single level. So between C1 and C2, we probably have the biggest gap among all the levels. So of course it takes time. It takes time to get from C1 to C2. And you need to practice. You need to practice probably with Russian speakers most of the time and not with your fellow students. Most likely to take C2, you need some individual classes and not only in the group. And most likely you need to go to Russia pretty often. So let's take a look. First of all, as always, I'm just gonna say a few words about our language testing center. And I strongly encourage you to go online, to go to our website and check the list of testing centers that we have all over the world. We have them in Asia, in Europe, in both of Americas, and also we're opening up in Middle East, probably in Australia very soon. And I hope that you can find a testing center really near to you, really close by, where you can take a test. If you can't find anything, just make sure to attend the webinar this Wednesday, which is day after tomorrow, and you will hear a lot about how to participate in the exam online. If you take the test and if you successfully pass it, you receive a certificate, which is in Russian and English, and which clearly states your level, but doesn't give any information about your scores. If you want to see your scores, you need to see a statement of results, where your individual scores for every part will be published. And statement of result we can issue in any language of your choice, whilst the certificate is just English and Russian. Okay, so getting back to levels, that's what we have. So as you can see, we are at the 4th level. Don't be confused by the names of the Russian exams, because in Russian we call it elementary, basic, and then levels from 1 to 4. Usually it's actually a level number 6, because we have 6 of them, starting from A1 to C2. But in Russian we call it 4th уровень, TRKI 4 or TOEFL 4. And that's the highest level, corresponding with the Common European Framework of Reference. And if you ever took a test, the language test in any other language, you know that it's the same system for all of them, C2 being the most difficult, the most challenging level, out of 6. Just to remind you, C2, just like every other part, every other level has 5 parts. Sorry, I don't know what I'm saying. It has 5 parts, and you need to pass every part individually. And every part needs to be scored at the level of 66%. So you need to get 66% to every part. If you take 4 parts and you pass them successfully, the last one can be a bit lower, so you can score 60% of this part and still pass the exam. But this rule is only there for people who successfully pass 4 other parts. If you don't really get this level, if you don't really pass even the 60% mark, you can retake 1 or 2 parts. So it can be any parts out of 5. So it can be, for example, writing and speaking. That's completely normal and it's even quite common. But at the same time, remember that it's just 66%. Yeah, it's just 2/3. So you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know the language at the native level. Near native, maybe, but definitely not the native one. You don't have to speak language, Russian language, just as good as your teacher. You need to speak good enough to pass it. And I think when it comes to testing, when it comes to exams like this, half of your result is usually your actual knowledge of language, your knowledge of grammar, your knowledge of vocabulary, your ability to listen and read and speak. But half of it is knowing the rules. And this is very important. You know the rules and you know exactly what this examiner expecting from you. So what we were trying to do in all these webinars, we were trying to prepare you for exactly that. We can't really regulate your level, but I'm pretty sure that you have a teacher or you self-study and you know your strong points, your weak points. But what we're trying to do here is to prepare you particularly for the test, to know exactly what to expect at the exam day. At the same time, to know if you're ready or not for this level, you need to have some certain criteria. And you can look at the CFL website, I'm just copying it here, for a reference scale for speaking. So to understand better, are you prepared for this exam or not? Are you ready to take it? As we discussed last time, it is probably after you constantly being communicating in Russian language. So you take C1 when you already spent some time in Russia, but you take C2 when you feel like you want to work with Russian as a linguist, maybe as a teacher of Russian, maybe as a translator, interpreter, especially maybe as a literature interpreter. So that's the reason why most of our students decide to take C2. And you need some linguistic knowledge for this. As you're going to see today, you also need it for writing and for speaking. So it's a good idea to practice your style. It's a good idea to practice reading and listening different texts. And it's a good idea to talk just as much as you can. Because when it comes to speaking, as usual, you have 5 different aspects of your speaking. One is a range, and range being great flexibility. I think when it comes to C2, you are able to say anything you want, and not only that, you're also able to express the same point of view, the same thought, but using different vocabulary, different grammar according to your listener. So if you're talking with a child, you're probably going to use particular vocabulary, particular constructions, and even particular style. You might talk about the very same matter with an adult, even with someone who is higher status than you, for example, your boss or your teacher, and you're going to use a completely different one. So that's all about flexibility. That's all about restructuring your speech according to your audience. Also, you probably know quite a few idioms. You know that we have a lot of them in Russian. And at the beginning of your study, when you're just A1, A2, it's not very important. I would say it's not crucial to know idioms to be able to have a good command of Russian and to be able to understand each other with a native speaker. But when it comes to C2, you're probably interested not only in Russian language, but also in Russian culture, or in a culture of a country where the language is spoken, for example, Ukraine or Belarus or Kazakhstan. You're interested in culture, you understand some background information and background knowledge, and that helps you express yourself better and to understand your interlocutor better. What else in terms of range? You are able to give emphasis. What does it mean? You are able to structure your speech in a way which is most interesting to listen to and easiest to follow. So you're able to give your points from the least important to the most important one, or the other way around, from the most important to the least important one. You understand how it's better to structure your speech and emphasize the most important parts of it. Also, in terms of accuracy, you barely make any mistakes at all. Usually, even if you make it, you understand it pretty quickly. So you understand that you used something which was not supposed to be there, like a preposition or a case, and you're able to self-correct. You don't expect your interlocutor to correct you. Yeah. So here, what we usually do when we practice for C2, you're also able to correct others, not necessarily openly. So it's not like you're being one of those people who just keep correcting the interlocutor, but you're able to do so. Yeah. So the tasks that you can practice before taking this test is try and work as an examiner. Yeah, so try and listen to other people, especially to other students. Try to understand, try to locate, to point out these mistakes or errors. Try to understand the grounds for them and try to think, what would be a better way to say the same thing? Same about reading, same about writing, because basically speaking and listening are very much interrelated, and writing and reading are very much interrelated. So when you read works of others, you might think about how you would write about this, how you would write about the very same matter, but in a better Russian. When it comes to preparing for writing, I often say that it's a good idea to keep a diary in Russian. Yes, so it's a good idea just to practice writing in your everyday life. So it can be just 5 minutes a day or so, but you practice actual writing. When it comes to fluency of your language, you are able to talk spontaneously, so you don't need much preparation at all. And even when it comes to very difficult matters, even when it comes to some specific topics, you might not be able to talk about it in detail, just like as Russian would. Yeah, I can't really talk about quantum physics with you right now unless I prepare for it. But at the same time, you don't have to have much time to prepare the actual monologue. So, being familiar with the topic, knowing a few basic words and grammar constructions, you can express yourself spontaneously. Also, it is very important, the speed of your speech is very even. So it's a very natural flow. You don't slow down if you're not quite sure about what you're saying, and you don't speed up too much so your listener doesn't understand you anymore. Your level is very, very even. What does it mean? It doesn't mean that you always have to speak with a very high literary language, but what you can do, you can simplify it a bit. And it's completely normal and completely fine to speak sometimes a very simple language, but at the same time being very consistent. And this, the way you can use, if you don't really know what to say, if you don't really know how to participate in a conversation on this particular topic, you are able to simplify your speech in order to make communicating easier for you and for your listener. When it comes to interaction, you are able to perform at any role. So you can begin a conversation. You can finish the conversation by yourself. You can take turns, and you feel exactly when to interfere. You feel exactly when to say something, and you are able to interrupt. Doesn't mean that you actually do it, but you are able to interrupt at the very right moment. You are able to argue very well. Yeah. You kind of do it at C1 already, but here you feel completely confident doing so. And when it comes to nonverbal communication, you're familiar with the Russian gestures, with the Russian mimics, because as you know, it's slightly different from probably your native language or your native culture. Russian people smile at a bit different moments than, for example, American people. Our gesticulation is a little bit different. Our body language is a little bit different. And by this level, by C2 level, you're familiar with that. So sometimes you can understand the mood of your speaker, or maybe his background, the background information he's trying to give you, not even listening to him, but looking at him. And that's all about interaction too. So that's all about the speaking. Last bit is the coherence. I think it's not very much of a difference between level C2 and C1. So you have a really coherent and cohesive discourse. So you have a very wide range of connectors. You have a very wide range of introductory words, of some connections that you might be using between parts, between paragraphs, between phrases. These connectors don't have to be grammatical, so they don't be actual conjunctions. They can be lexical. So, for example, when you use a word in a sentence and then you replace it with a synonym in the other one, and you're able to see these links very, very well. So I think that's about the coherence of your speech. Also, you're able to organize your speech in patterns. So, for example, you can express the very same meaning using, let's say, 2 phrases and using 20 phrases if you need to perform the whole monologue. Yeah. So that's about your speech at this level. What else? Talking about the actual C2, we have 40 minutes for speaking, and speaking consists of 5 parts, and it's pretty different from B2 and C1. If you remember, when we talked about B2 and C1, they were very similar. So we kind of can split it up in a sense, A1, A2, and B1. They have a very similar speaking part, just maybe with a little bit of adding here and there. When it comes to B2 and C1, it's also a different speaking pattern. When it comes to C2, it's something completely new. We still have usage of antonyms, we still have these dialogues, which are the beginning of the task usually, so just 2 tasks. But when it comes to the rest of the tasks, it's mostly about you. So here, usually, you are the one who begins the dialogue, who ends it, who begins the monologue, who continues it, who ends it. So you basically are the leader of this discussion, the leader of this interaction. The examiner is mostly there to listen to you, to ask some additional questions, and basically just be there for you, just playing the role of your audience. Mostly you're talking by yourself. Mostly it's all about the monologues. You can't really use a dictionary here, unfortunately, in any part, and we specifically emphasize it at speaking and writing, because usually, as you remember, at every other level, you're allowed to use dictionary for this. So either bilingual dictionary or a definition dictionary for B2 and C1, but for C2, you're not allowed to use a dictionary at all. To be fair, I don't really think that you have time to use a dictionary, because as you're going to see now, the preparation time is also very short. So it's mostly about not you trying to attempt something that you're not sure about, not of you trying to attempt a very difficult vocabulary, but more about you thinking about how to structure your speech better. So you know what to say, you just need some time to structure it and maybe to find a good synonym or two for some words. Yeah. So let's take a look at this test, task by task, and we're going to begin with tasks 1 to 4, which are responding using antonyms. And please get ready, because now I'm going to need your help to participate in this little dialogue. What do we have here? It's a very similar task to B2 or C1, but it doesn't have a specific topic. What we have is only one word that you need to find antonyms for. But in every phrase the examiner says, this word has a slightly different meaning. So eventually you end up finding antonyms for the very same word, but it's going to be 4 different antonyms according to the context. You don't have any preparation time for it, and that's a very fair task. So I'll ask you to look at the slide now and find antonyms for the word zolotoy. So as you know, in Russian, zolotoy, well, it means gold, it means golden, but it's not necessarily about the metal, yeah? So it can be something else. I'm asking you now to take a look at sentence number 1 and find the answer here. Just one word. So what do you think can be an antonym for this word «золотой» in the very first phrase. У этого мастера золотые руки. What can we say? What can be an antonym for the word «золотой» in the very first phrase? Doesn't have to be just золотой, yeah? So you can find an antonym for the whole золотые руки, yeah? What does золотые руки mean? Think about it. Any ideas? Any ideas about this? No? Золотые руки. Is it a good description of a master or is it not? We're talking about someone who has золотые руки. Well, maybe if you're not sure about an antonym, maybe you can just type in the chat. Do you think it's a good characteristic or not? Is it more of a compliment or is it more an insult? Отлично, Кристина. This is a great antonym. Никудышная. Thank you so much. So золотые руки is definitely a compliment. Yes, so it's a great thing to have золотые руки. Никудышная. Этот мастер ничего не умеет делать. Мастер неумеха. Мастер растяпа. Мастер совершенно не знает, как надо работать. Да? So all this can be antonyms. Look, I can use the whole phrase. I don't have to just say one word, but I can use the whole phrase. Okay, what can be an antonym for number 2? Вот смотри, в этом отделе только золотые украшения. What could you reply to an examiner saying you this phrase? Золотые украшения. Maybe an antonym, maybe some sort of an alternative can be here. What could be an alternative for золотые украшения? Спасибо, Кристина. Поддельное, да? Отлично. Поддельное. Бижутерия, да? Even серебряное, silver, would be a good, it's not quite of an antonym, but it's actually an alternative, yeah? So something here about, specifically about metal. What about the next phrase? В этом году осень по-настоящему золотая. Золотая осень. Золотая осень. That's probably something when we have this dry weather. Yeah, we can find an antonym, but not necessarily to this specific золотая. Ужасная. Отлично. Да? So it can be the whole phrase. Ужасная, дождливая, ветреная, противная. Правда? So золотая осень is a dry, nice, beautiful weather. So what can we have instead? Некрасивая, скучная, серая, да? So that's all about antonym here. У тебя золотой ребенок, ты зря его ругаешь. Number 4. What do you think can be an antonym for this one? У тебя золотой ребенок. Непослушный, отлично. Плохо воспитанный, непослушный, excellent. Может быть, глупый, да, может быть неприятный, да, может быть, назойливый, может быть, какой-то невоспитанный, плохо воспитанный. That's probably something could be an antonym here, yeah? Or maybe just тоже неприятный, отвратительный, кошмарный. We don't really say it about the kid, but that still can be an antonym, right? So that's something that we can use here, right? So what you see, we have 4 words. We have quite a few words in Russian that can mean different things according to context. And that's a classic example of it, yeah? So if you think about some other words, usually it's an adjective, which can mean different things according to the context. That's a good practice. Like, for example, it can be a word большой, right? So, великий. It can be a word маленький. It can be a word холодный. It can be a word горячий too. Yeah, so it can be different things that you need to think about and need to find a group of examples which you can use with every adjective. Usually it's just very simple, the most basic adjectives that have this range of different usages. What we have next is tasks 5 to 8, and here we also have a dialogue. Unfortunately, I'm not sure we are able to practice it, but we'll see. Maybe we'll try, yeah? And what we are supposed to do here? We're supposed to participate in 2 dialogues. And in these 2 dialogues, we have exactly same topic. This topic is repeated, but the emotions are not. In the first half, in the first dialogue, which is tasks 5 and 6, you have some mild emotions. So your speech doesn't have to be very emotional here. Yes, it's just about being very polite, being very kind, being gentle. But in the second half, you're being angry. All your emotions become stronger. All your emotions become more acute, and you're trying to express yourself in much more in an angry and much more emotional way. You don't have any preparation time here, and the examiner will have 2 phrases. Will expect you to say 2 phrases for each of these dialogues. So overall, 4 phrases. Let's take a look. What can it be? The situations can be like this. You were in another country for a few days, and your mobile provider just withdrew some money from your mobile phone, even though you didn't use it while you were abroad. And you came to this mobile provider office to find out what happened and try to solve the situation. So take a look at the dialogues. It's very clear what exactly you're supposed to be saying. So the dialogue, you can see the situations in front of you, and the examiner expects you to, first of all, explain why did you come to the office, and then ask for explanation, right? So that's you're talking with an operator. Then you have much stronger emotions. You have your dissatisfaction, you're very displeased, you're very angry and emotional, and you try to convince the administrator that you must have your money back. Otherwise, you might even threaten them with something, yeah? So what your logic can be, you can begin with something very mild, yeah? As you can see, it grows, it goes more and more emotional by the end of the dialogue too. So that's why you don't have to begin straight away with demands, straight away with a very straightforward requests. What you can begin with is being nice, being polite, being just explanatory, and then with every phrase, your anger is raising and you become more and more emotional. And at the end, you can say even that you will go to a court, if they will have to pay you a fine, they will have to, you will stop being their client. So you can try to be more and more active, more and more angry at them, yeah, and just being more and more assertive. If you just begin with being this way at the very beginning, then you will have no room for growing. Then you will not have really a reason to be angry at the end, because you will say everything at the very beginning and you will go downhill from there. You don't want to do it, but that's exactly the opposite that you're supposed to be doing. So that's why try to begin very calmly here. Try to begin very mildly. If you want, you can try to type some phrases that you can see that you would say here, yeah? Because obviously it's quite some speech, but while reading it, while listening to me, maybe you think about something. So if you want to share your thoughts, if you want to share how you would begin this conversation with just an operator, yeah, and then just with an administrator, you can type in the chat, we will take a look. For example, what can be an explanation for your visit? You can begin just like, I was abroad, yeah, and unfortunately this happened. What the examiner will do, they will try to protect this imaginary mobile network provider, yeah? They will try to play the role of your opponent, yeah? They will try to argue with you. And that's where you're becoming more and more emotional with every phrase. Then you demand it, then you're displeased, and then eventually you're threatening the whole company. Yeah, so that's how it goes. It's always the case. It doesn't necessarily have to be at an office. It can be with, it's usually a formal discussion, so it's rarely with your friend. Yeah, it's usually with either with your neighbor or maybe with some company, maybe with a shop where you're trying to return a bag or something. But it's all about being gradually more and more assertive in what you want to do. The next task is task 9. And here we have the first task out of those where you have a preparation time. So here you have 5 minutes to prepare, and you are supposed to explain a certain concept. So this is getting back to your speaking level, when you are able to talk about the very same thing, but depending on the category of your listener, you're explaining it in a different way. You will have about 5 minutes to talk, so usually it's about 2.5 minutes for the first one, 2.5 for the second one. Take a look. For example, here, your task is to prepare 2 monologues in order to explain one of the notions. Yeah, one of the notions can be respect, politeness, or consciousness. What do you have here? You have 2 different categories. One is students, and students in Russian, it's only university students, so that's people about 20 years old. And you have children from the first grade, so people about 6 or 7 years old. Yeah. And think about right now, while listening to me and while listening to this webinar, how would you explain this notion to these very different categories? For example, the notion of politeness. What can be important for students? What can be important for kids, which just start understanding this? How you would explain it? For example, which category, which monologue probably would have more examples? Which monologue will have more of addressing your listeners with вы rather than ты? Да? Which monologue might have more complex phrases and which monologue might be simpler? What questions might you expect from every category of listeners? Yeah, I guess you're able to answer all of my questions by yourself, right? So probably with the kids, you're going to explain it in a very illustrative manner. You will use many examples. You will use less abstract techniques, less abstract notion and more of the imagination. With students, you might use вы instead of ты. You might be much more abstract. You don't have many advices, but at the same time, you might talk with students as with people who are familiar with this concept already and just need some additional polishing up. Same thing about most of them. So usually you have this kind of choice, yeah? So all these notions are very, very abstract. So it's not something very specific. And you have categories which are different in age and also in a background. It can be teachers, can be maybe retired people, can be adults and kids, but they're going to be very different. What can you do here? You can write a short plan. So think about the plan for the first monologue and for the second one. Think that you don't have that much time to write the whole text. And try to make a variety, not only in terms of the general speech process, but also in terms of your intonation, in terms of your mimic, in terms of your emotion, and in terms of your body language, So try to be different for these 2 monologues. So that was task number 9. I hope that is kind of interesting. I actually think that taking C2 is really interesting because you just participate in so many different tasks that you rarely participated in real life. What about the next one? Is playing a boss in a formal communication. What we have here, you have 5 minutes to prepare and you have a dialogue. This is actually a very similar thing like you have in C1 when you have a complaint towards one of your employees and you need to talk with this employee and explain what was done wrong and what are you expecting him to change. Take a look here. Usually, that's where you need your linguistic knowledge because you're going to have a text, and this text is with some mistakes. you're going to have some mistakes, which can be vocabulary related, which can be style related, which can be factual. You don't have to look for them. So these mistakes are usually underlined in the text already. What you need to do is you just need to choose 5 to 7 mistakes, choose some of them, and you need to explain to your employee why does he have to correct it, and how should he correct it. Yeah. So it's always just the text. For example, here you have a commercial for a new furniture store, for a new furniture collection. Let's take a look at the text, and I will ask you to think about the mistakes here, if you're able to see in this really, really tiny font. Vita Dominus – одна из популярных коллекций мебели. Несмотря на 5-летний опыт существования на рынке, компания может гордиться богатым ассортиментом. Достаточная для строительства зоны. Отличается суровым и изысканным дизайном. В одной цветовой гамме. As you can see, a lot of things, well, already underlined. Yeah. And what you can see is these words, they all exist. So it's nothing about having a word which is completely out of range here. But we definitely can change them. Some of them, they just don't look right. Take a look. 5-летний опыт существования на рынке. What do you think is wrong here? Why is it underlined? What is a mistake? Or maybe here it's not much of a mistake, but it's an error. What is wrong? Why is it 5-летний опыт, which is not really good? What can you replace it with? That's a question for you. Try to do it in the chat. Think about несмотря на 5-летний опыт. Is it a long time? Is it not a long time? What do you think? I think here what we have is probably it's not a very long time, right? So it's a bit of a factual mistake too. What we can have instead, несмотря на только 5 лет существования на рынке, да, компания может гордиться богатым ассортиментом. Окей, хорошо. What about the, let's say, все необходимое и достаточное для строительства современной деловой зоны. What is wrong with the word строительство here? What do you think? Try to type something, yeah? You were very active last time when we talked about listening and vocabulary and grammar and reading. Try to do it here. I know that it might look quite difficult, but I'm not going to judge you, believe me. I'm not going to decide if I should give you a C2 certificate or not. I just want to see your reaction. What do you think? So, строительство can replace with some other word. Обустройство, отлично, обустройство, создание. We don't really say that we build an office space. We say creating an office space, yeah? We say putting all the furniture there. Обустройство, создание, дизайна, может быть, правда? Really good. What about this? What mistakes do you see here? Корпусная мебель производится в одной цветовой гамме. Шпон американской вишни или ореха. Any mistake in the word одной? Единый, really good. So here you can actually have a choice. One is saying единый, so that's a kind of united color. But at the same time, if you take a look at вишня или орех, we actually have a choice. So it can be двух цветовых гаммах, it can be the factual mistake here, right? So you can treat it as a stylistic mistake, so единый, or it's a factual one. Really good. What about суровый и изысканный дизайн? Any way we could replace суровый with? Суровый design sounds a little bit scary, I think, yeah? So it sounds a little bit like we're from the army. Строгий дизайн, отлично. Строгий, классический, да? Строгий design, excellent, really, really good. Thank you so much. And let's do maybe консервативный. That's a really good example too. Let's do one, maybe last one. Let's take a look at this. Создавая приличный деловой интерьер и спокойную рабочую атмосферу. The last sentence in the third paragraph. Приличный, probably also not the best thing in a text like this. Here it's not a commercial. So what can we replace it with? Приличный деловой интерьер. How we can describe it in a bit of more tasty, in a bit of nicer way. Приличный деловой интерьер. Just деловой, really good. You can just remove it, right? That's an also really good thing to do. You can just remove an extra word. Or you can put приятный глазу, да? Удачный, просто, да, деловой. Опять же, да, строгий, аккуратный деловой интерьер. Really good. Yes, that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. So you can give me some recommendations on how to replace or even remove some of the words, at the same time keeping the same meaning. But let's take a look what else you're supposed to do. If we just get back one slide. You don't have to, so what we just did now, it was a number 3, yeah, проанализировать параграф и отметить его недостатки. So what we were doing, we were trying to find these mistakes and understand how to correct them, yeah? At the same time, you also need to do the first 2 steps. So explain me, why did you call me? What happened? What are you unhappy about? And then express your opinion about it. You don't have to be a very strict boss here. You can be nice. It's really up to you. So you can just say that, yeah, I understand that you're normally a very good employee, you're normally a very good writer, but something in this particular text did not go quite well. So maybe you can correct it like this. Yeah, so don't forget about your introduction to the dialogue. At the very end, you need to give me some suggestions on how to correct it. That's what we also did now. But also don't forget to give me some timing. So tell me to do it by the end of tomorrow, by the end of today, next week, maybe add something to the text. So feel free to imagine yourself in this role. Imagine yourself to be my editor. Yeah. So it's not only about going through mistakes. Moreover, you only need to select a few of them, the ones you are certain about the most. And you will have to create the whole dialogue. So that takes about 6 or 7 minutes to speak. Be ready that your examiner may start arguing with you. So he can start saying, well, why can't I say приличный деловой интерьер? Why can't I say правильно сочетая новейшие технологии и ремесленные традиции? What's wrong with that? That's completely normal. That's exactly what I saw on the web. Be ready to defend your point of view. You can agree with him, but probably if it's underlined, that's actually a mistake. That's actually an error. So be ready to defend your point of view. The next bit is probably the most interesting for us to listen to, and that's a monologue. That's a really long monologue, which is about 7 minutes. We have up to 15 minutes here, but that's including the questions. You need to prepare a promotion monologue. What does it mean? Let's take a look. You are a representative of a certain community. It can be some club. It can be some local community. It can be a sport team. It can be anything really. So you have your own little community which you represent. You might be a leader of it. And what you're interested in is to gain more participants. For that reason, you appear at a TV channel or at a radio station, and you have a unique chance to tell about your project. So this is something you actually can think about at home a little bit before you even take a test. If you have this task, what would you talk about? What would be your project? What would be your community? What can it be? Well, for example, something related to nature, something related to sustainability or environment, something related to studying, something related to volunteering, helping, let's say, elderly people. Yeah. Or maybe something you're doing in the real life. So for example, if you're into, I don't know, crocheting, yeah, or knitting, you can talk about this. At the same time, your monologue should be pretty lengthy, and you should explain what exactly does your organization do? What do you do? Why do you need new members? Who exactly are you looking for? How to reach to you? And what you're going to do together. So, what does it mean воздействующего характера? Публичный монолог воздействующего характера. It means convincing. It means that you need to convince your listener that what you're doing is extremely interesting and valuable. After your speech, which takes about 7 minutes, as we said, you give your contact details. Don't forget about that. And you listen to the questions of your listeners. While you're talking, examiner can make notes. So don't be stressed. Don't be surprised by it, because usually that's the questions that your examiner is planning to ask you. And at the end, he's going to ask you different types of questions. Some of them can be just about the explanation. So they're probably the easiest ones. For example, the examiner can ask, well, what do you think? What kind of age? Yeah, what age people can be to join your team? Yeah. Or who are you looking for in terms of their interest or in terms of their background? It can be just an explanatory one. It can be a supportive question. So like, yeah, that's really good. I'm doing the same thing. Let's collaborate. It can also be a question which is here just to degrade you and offend you. So for example, where do you get money from this? Yeah. Where do you get, am I paying my taxes in order to cover your community? Why do you even exist? Why are you needed? Yes, so be really, really confident in what you're doing. Try not to argue openly. Remember that you're a TV channel, but at the same time, try to clearly explain and defend your point of view. Yeah, and that's about your first. And the second task is to defend your point of view in a short conversation with your listeners. Yeah. At the very end, don't forget to give a certain outcome, your examiner will help you with that too, but at the very end, you need to finish somehow. So don't forget to say hello at the very end, at the very beginning, and then say goodbye at the very end. Behave as if you're really on air, yeah, as if you're really live. So as I said, that's probably one specific task that you can prepare at home. So think about it a little bit and come prepared, because all the rest is definitely no preparation is even possible. But here you can, so think about what can it be, right? Okay, so what kind of tips I can give you in terms of speaking after talking through every single task? You need to speak to different people, and you need to try all the roles. Try to begin doing it even at B2 level. And maybe prepare some vocabulary from different topics, prepare some gap fillers too. I think this is very important, that if you don't really know what to say, if you're not quite sure how to express yourself, try to use these Russian gap fillers, which we Russians like to use. So make sure you know it, and make sure you know when to use them wisely. It's a really good idea to record yourself, especially for this last task that you're preparing. It's a really good idea to record the lengthy monologues in order just to find the ways to improve your grammar, to improve your pronunciation, and to see what would you add, how would you phrase it differently. Retelling stories from films can really help you here and can really help you in writing, as we're going to see very soon. And stay calm even if your examiner asks you an additional question or stops you in the middle of a monologue. Be also certain that you can repeat. You can ask to repeat at any moment of the speech. Yeah. So that's when it comes for speaking. And if you have any questions about it, please let me know. These particular tasks you can find at our website, at St. Petersburg State University website, the Language Testing Center, where you can just see for yourself, try to practice them at home, because that's kind of our open materials that you can prepare by. The next one is writing. So what can we say about writing? Writing is very similar to speaking in terms of The consistency in terms of the style is really important, and your writing should be pretty clear. What usually happens at C2 writing, unfortunately, what usually happens is that people have time to write 2 texts, but not the third one, or 2.5, but not the fully. Try to do the following. When you write, make sure that if you have to stop, and it happens sometimes that you just don't have enough time, try to finish it up somehow. Don't leave it hanging open. If you understand that you did not give all the points that you're planning to give, but you are short of time, try to write some sort of a conclusion phrase. Try to finish it up, because that's exactly what we are looking for. We're looking for a smooth, clear text which represents a summary of your thoughts. Usually, your examiner will not be able to understand that you were supposed to write something else unless you clearly state so. But if you leave your text unfinished, that's a really clear sign that you did not have enough time. And I think it's not a really good idea to show it, You can write complex letters here, you can write reports, and you can write reviews, and that's exactly what you will be doing in this part, in the C2. And as we said before, when it comes to your speaking and when it comes to your writing, you need to be very logical. Think about how to underline and emphasize a significant point in the best possible way. What can help you doing so? When you read different articles, when you read different books, try to think, how would you summarize it? If you had a task to summarize War and Peace or Crime and Punishment, what would you do? How would you write Crime and Punishment in only 3 phrases, let's say, Because that's usually what we are struggling with. It's really easy to write a long text, and it's really, really easy just to kind of bubble around and just think about writing a really, really long, several paragraphs discussion. But at the same time, when it comes to being clear, being short, and being simple, that's usually the most difficult part. So try to practice it in just your everyday life. Let's take a look at the tasks. So you will have 75 minutes for 3 tasks, and the texts you're supposed to be writing are not that long. So it's 250, 200, and 350 words. The last one is the longest. The second one is the shortest, and probably the second one is also the simplest, as you're going to see now. You're not allowed to use dictionary, and therefore try to avoid using too complicated vocabulary. Try to avoid using structures which you're not sure about. Try to be simple, straightforward, but clear. Let's take a look at the very first task, and the first task is a bit similar to your last task in speaking. Again, you have a chance to perform with a lecture, with a speech at some community. You are given a choice of topics, so you don't have to write on a certain one, you can choose one. Take a look very specifically, what is your task? You need to write an abstract. It's not the whole speech, it's not the whole monologue, it's just an abstract. What can it be? You can choose to write the full text, or you can choose to write just bullet points. That's completely fine. Both ways are normal. But make sure to write just a few things. Don't write «Дорогие слушатели», «Сейчас я расскажу вам». All these introductory things are necessary here, because you're just writing an analysis, just writing a plan or an abstract of what you're trying to say. For example, let's take a look at the screen. You have 3 topics here. So West and East, volunteering organizations, and some environmental problems. You can choose one, whichever sounds most appealing for you. And what you're supposed to be doing here, you can write about the background. So if you're talking about, let's say, volunteering organization, try to write something about history. You don't have to know it in detail, so that it doesn't have to be factually correct. But it would be a good idea to write about when did volunteering start in the world or in Russia, abroad, how does it look right now, how is it developing, what way is it developing, and what is the reason for it, and what do you see will happen in future. So how many points, if you decide to write bullet points, let's say, how many points can be there? Well, at least 4, right? Just because you have 4 different parts you need to enlighten. At the same time, it can be even more. I would say usually what we have here is about 7 to 8 bullet points, and every bullet point is about 2 phrases, and that will give you pretty much 200 or 250 words. Here, you can use a lot of shortenings, such as итд, итп, да, и так далее, и тому подобное, etc., or напр, or pr, прочее, да, so you can use a lot of different shortenings, you can use some very clear and short phrases, because it's not about how you're going to speak, it's all about what you're just going to use as a plan for your topic. The next task is a text. So that's a bit longer, and that's usually the easiest one because this is a letter. This is a letter to a friend. So it's a little bit similar to maybe C1 or even B2 task. It's where you need to recommend something to a person. Let's take a look what we have here. For example, here we have your friend who is going to work in your country, and you need to write a letter to him on how to behave in your country in order not to get into trouble. What you can do, you can actually, here you have all the chances to be informal. You can address your interlocutor with ты. You can use some of the slang if you want, and you really have to begin with an appealing phrase, finish with a closing phrase, right? So you really have to write the full text here, not like in the very first task. And your idea is to give advice. Try to use as many examples as possible here, and try to give some warnings, but try to keep it to minimum. After all, it's supposed to be the shortest text out of 3. What I can see is a tendency, since it is the simplest one to write, a lot of people, a lot of candidates are trying to make it the longest, and then they don't have time for the last essay. In order to avoid it, keep it short, keep it simple, but at the same time, try to include all the recommendations from the task. What we have here, we have some advice in terms of etiquette, some behavior advice, yeah, and also some just very practical suggestions: where to rent a flat, where to rent a car, where to live, which area is considered to be good or not. So try to cover every point with maybe one sentence and see how many words are left. I would say here it's about half of the page A4, maybe a little bit more, maybe 2/3, but that's the maximum. Don't forget that you also need some time and some space to write your contact details, because if your friend decides to ask you some more questions, you should be welcome to do so, and you need to give your email address or your phone number, and don't forget to sign it, put a date on, so just make sure that you write it as a real email or as a real letter. What's next? We have a final one, and this is an essay. When it comes to essay, I think usually that's the simplest task in terms of the structure, because it's a very similar to what we have in some Western or even Eastern schools, when we are supposed to write an essay and we're given a topic and we have an argument and we have 3 supporting examples for this argument and we have a conclusion. So that's exactly the same here. You're supposed to write an essay, but take a look at the very specific format of it. You need to write a retelling. Imagine that you're writing a review to a certain book or film. Usually, you can choose anything out of a certain topic. So what you're supposed to write, you're supposed to write a review, but focusing on the retelling. Giving your feelings about this is not necessary. You can, but only at the very end. What is necessary is to describe what was happening in the film and kind of link it to the topic that you want to talk about. So let's say I want to talk about the environment, and I'm giving as an example the TV show called Lost, and I'm explaining what is going on there. So What you can do is you can begin with clearly stating what topic do you want to talk about. For example, it can be, political situations in your own country or political situations in Russia. Then you're giving a name of the film and all the details about it. So name of a director and what year was it produced in. You don't have to be factually correct for this. And then you're given the actual retelling. So what can be a retelling? It can be the main points of what happened. Who was there? What were the characters? And what kind of people were they? And what was going on? And then you are given a link to words expressing your own point of view. So then you're given this, after making a conclusion on how does the film end, you can give a few examples of your own, yeah? So few feelings, express a few emotions, but don't focus on this too much. It's supposed to be just one or two phrases at the very end. So it's relatively easy, but at the same time, if you don't finish it, and you will not if you spend too much time on the first two tasks, that is really visible, because if you don't finish it, it's clear that you did not write the story up until the end. So try to be short, don't focus too much on the details, but at the same time, give the reader a general idea of what is this film about, in order for me to understand it, even if I have never watched it before. Okay, so this is the task 3. One last thing I want to say about it: you can kind of experiment with being either you are telling a story from the point of view of one of the characters. So you can do this. You can do from the point of view of a director. That's what I filmed, making it like an interview. Or probably the easiest thing, point of view of the viewer. Yeah. So point of view of someone who just watched it. Same thing about the time. You can give it in the present time, you can give it in the past, or sometimes even in the future, but at the same time, try to keep it consistent. If you decide to retell it in the past, don't switch to present just out of the blue. If you decide to tell about the present, don't switch to past. Finally, when you retell, don't only focus on what has happened, don't only focus on the story, but also give a description of the appearance, give a description of the nature of the character of the people. Yeah. So try to retell the whole story in a way like we all just watched it. What can you do to prepare for this task? You can read reviews. So a good idea, a lot of reviews are actually just on Wikipedia. So if you open a film, a page of the film that you like, or a page of a particular book, you will have a short summary of this book or a film. So try to read it, try to see how does it usually look, and what kind of connectors and conjunctions do authors use for it. Also, you can use different websites like Kinopoisk, or maybe some news websites like Lenta or Medusa, where they give reviews to different contemporary art. And that's going to help you to structure your own. So that's all just about the practice and writing the reviews. What can we say to sum it up for the writing? So you definitely need to read instructions for each part. And as you can see now, it is really giving you an idea of what to do. So sometimes you can just follow the instruction point by point, and you will get the majority of your writing already done. Allocate your time wisely. At the beginning of every task, you have an approximate timing. So an approximate amount of time that this task might take. You don't have to follow it really rigidly, but at the same time, it gives you an idea that last task will take the most time. The second task, the least. So try to allocate it wisely. Give yourself time to read through. Don't hesitate to make corrections. That's completely fine. So if you have to cross something out and write on top of it, that's absolutely okay until up to the point we still understand it. Mind the style of your text. So if you write review, don't switch to ты, yeah? Don't switch to a very informal style of communication. Keep it simple, but formal and polite. At the same time, if you write the task number 2, you can be very informal, you can make fun, you can make jokes. Try to draft a plan of your text, especially important for the first one. So the first one, the plan will probably be your abstract, just a little bit more detailed, and keep your text within the word limit. You have a minimal and maximum word limits. So if you keep it within minimum, it's already enough. Believe me, you don't have to do it too much. So that's all about writing and speaking. And of course, I think it's really good if you combine this webinar with the previous one, if you had to miss it, because we talked a lot about all the other parts in it. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some books. And if you were here for the previous webinars, you might recognize them. What you need to bring to your exam are definitely pens and a highlighter in order to highlight the most important bits when you prepare for your speech or when you prepare for the writing. And what books can help you? First of all, don't forget to take a look at Программа по РКИ in order to find out if you have any things that you missed, any grammatical topics, any vocabulary things that you might have missed while preparing. Don't forget about государственный стандарт and типовые тесты. The test we practiced today and we practiced last time, it's not from this book. So if you want to go through one more version of a test, this is a good idea to do it, yeah? And also you will see, I think in типовые тесты and both in государственный стандарт and типовые тесты, you have some recommendations, yeah? So you have some explanations on what to do. The next thing that can help you preparing for writing is Золотое перо. So it's a really good way to source some information on how to structure it better, or source some connectors, and source some introductory phrases. Окно в Россию русский для продвинутых will help you with your speaking and will help you with finding some good topics for your speaking. So, for example, you can start preparing for your last task already now. And then you have a lot of dictionaries, so a wide range of dictionaries that you might be using. So that's паронимы, фразеология, синонимы, антонимы, да, крылатые слова, so some idioms, grammatical dictionary, and foreign words dictionary. So they are supposed to all help you. And while doing it, while going through dictionaries, don't just flip through them, but try to write examples with the words that you see them there, yeah? Try to find which words are actually interrelated between each other, what can be an example of usage, and what can be a synonym and an antonym for this word. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach to us, to this email address, or go to our website and find all the information about the test. And I hope to see you on Wednesday when we're going to talk about how to take the test online, okay? And what are the peculiarities, what is the unusual structure of the test online. We're definitely going to talk about it on Wednesday. Right now, I'm going to stay in the chat for a little while. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you so much for your attention and good luck. Yeah, good luck. I'm pretty sure maybe not every native speaker can manage C2, but every good learner can do it. Yeah, because I think sometimes our learners are just so much more efficient and so much smarter than even us native speakers. So I'm sure you're going to do it. Okay. Thank you so much and see you next time. Bye-bye.